Hi guys, welcome back to the desktop for another retro RPG, and the desktop's looking a bit more cut and scratched as I was doing some cutting on it this week. But once again, the camera is more square down from the top to give you a better look at the page. And please let me know if you prefer this style of video in the comments below, as it's more difficult for me to do, and if people don't care, I'd much rather prefer to the way I used, where I could actually tilt the camera more towards me so I could see what I was doing better. But if it's better for yous, let me know and I'll keep doing it this way. But anyway, on with it. And this week I am presenting this. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Castle Drachenfels by Carl Sargent, who also did the London sourcebook I covered last week. Now this is a sourcebook and adventure, but it's kind of like an adventuring location, with some adventure ideas thrown in, and it allows the games master to dip in a little or a lot and use just small amounts. You know, you could roleplay as a group of adventurers who are just passing by the ruins of Castle Drachenfels and you encounter something from it, or you could plunge right into it and encounter all the characters within. It's an interesting addition, and it's based on the location out of the novel Drachenfels by Kim Newman, who is a very good author, although in his early days he did write under the name Jack Yeovil for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and for Games Workshop's Dark Future. And I love his Dark Future novels, and I love Drachenfels. It's an amazingly good book. Kim Newman writes really interesting books which are kind of alternate history ones. So he did a Jack the Ripper story set in the aftermath of Dracula, where Dracula was not defeated and took over Britain. And then Jack the Ripper happens, so it's a very interesting setup for a book. But Drachenfels itself is a standard sort of fantasy book where the heroes are going into the castle to fight the evil Constant Drachenfels, a necromancer and demonologist. And they defeat him in the first 20 pages of the book. And the rest of the book is about skipping on 20 years. The adventurers are heroes because they beat this great menace to the Empire, and there's going to be a massive celebration for the 20th anniversary. And there's a playwright going to put on a play version of their mission against Drachenfels, and lots of other things are happening. And basically it turns out the adventurers didn't succeed in the first 20 pages. They failed. Drachenfels captured a couple of them and decided that since adventurers were coming after him, it was better to disappear. So he has set up that they would be victorious, that he would disappear off the face of the earth and keep going about his secretive stuff, and they would get to be heroes for 20 years. And then they would arrange to celebrate it at the ruins of Castle Drachenfels and bring all the leadership of the sort of known world. So the Emperor of the Empire and the leader of Britonia and all that. They would attend this big celebration of the defeat of Drachenfels, who was an ancient evil who'd gone back as far as Sigmar, who himself has become a god in the old world. But he would have all the leadership there, and he could basically take over the known world at one strike. Now, it's a really interesting book. It's really well done. Kim Newman is a fantastic author. And of course, with it being a Warhammer novel, they couldn't fail to take advantage of it, and they released the sourcebook, Castle Drachenfels. But let's flip over to the back cover. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, Castle Drachenfels. Deep within the grey mountains, almost hidden among the jagged peaks, lurks the dark imposing castle of the Great Enchanter Drachenfels. Even though its master is now dead, his terrible presence scoured from the conscious mind and only mentioned in fireside tales, the mute stone walls of the castle still seem to stir with dark and malicious purpose. Many brave adventurers have entered the castle's foreboding walls in search of treasure and glory, or to satisfy their morbid curiosities. Few have ever returned. Those that have tell of strange forces and long-dead creatures prowling the slimy corridors, guarding the bowels of their master's domain from unwelcome intrusion. Now you stand awestruck at the gaping maw that is the castle entrance. Now you must enter and test your mettle against the dangers within. Drachenfels is a 112-page Warhammer Fantasy roleplay adventure for experienced adventurers based on the locations and characters from Warhammer novel Drachenfels by Jack Yeovil. In addition to a history of Constant Drachenfels and his castle, the book also contains detailed notes on adventuring in the dank, dark corridors of Castle Drachenfels, a selection of adventure outlines and plots, party of pre-generated characters, new monsters, new spells, and magic items. Packed with dark and mysterious locations to explore and rich treasures to reap, Castle Drachenfels opens a whole new world to anyone who plays Warhammer Fantasy roleplay. Dare you enter the castle gates and see what lies beyond. It's not a complete game. A copy of Warhammer Fantasy roleplay is needed to use this book. Now, Castle Drachenfels, if we flip into it, is a Games Workshop production of the era. It came out in 1992. So they were very much at their height. The artwork is done by John Blanche doing the cover there. We've got Carl Sargent writing it, Graham Davis editing, maps by Ian Cook, and we've got lovely artwork within. Beginning the adventure, it hooks into the Enemy Within campaign, the Warhammer campaign itself, which, as I've mentioned before, is one of the best role-playing campaigns ever written. And it hooks in, telling you it's best used after Power Behind the Throne. After Something Rotten in Kislev, it really hooks in. Castle Drachenfels could find a mind-numbing complication to add into the events of Empire in Flames, so you can add the book in almost anywhere in the campaign. The Restless Dead campaign, the Doomstones campaign. So it's telling you how to use this book with all the other campaigns which are out there for Warhammer. Fantastic piece of creating a overarching plot within your game world from pre-published books. The Challenge of Castle Drachenfels, Constant Drachenfels, the Great Enchanter. And we've got a brief history here. The road, so we're showing the area around it, the different towns, encounters in the mountains, approaching the castle itself, a geography of Drachenfels, over wall of the castle, overview of the castle, the walls, inside the castle, the courtyards, and we've got a map there. And in exterior locations and the minor towers, the Tower of Exhaustion, the Tower of Starvation, Tower of Despair, the Tower of Weakness. These are fantastically evocative names. The Tower of Terror, the Tower of Rage, the Well, the Fountain, the main buildings. Again, Games Workshop was at the top of its game. Their artists were really fantastic. This wall of beast heads, you know, being able to show people the gargoyle corridor with all these monstrous heads leaning out of it. The Chamber of Poison Feast, scene of one of Drachenfels' most infamous atrocities. This chamber has been sensibly shunned by most of the castle visitors. Around a richly decorated dining table sit the remains of Drachenfels' royal and aristocratic dupes. Only one or two skeletons in their finery have collapsed due to the mouldering heap on the tiled floor. So he invited people to a meal and poisoned them and left their bodies there. Such was the evil of Constant Drachenfels. So we go through the standard elements. We've got a library, a study, corridor of discord, the Chamber of Temptation, his throne room, his master bedroom, bath chamber, the Chambers of Light and Darkness, Light and Law, Darkness and Evil, the first floor chambers. So basically it's just mapping out the entirety of the castle with encounters, and you can just do a dungeon bash into it. So we'll flick through these without going through too many details. Nice demon dinosaur skeleton there. The Bone Field it was called. Demonette of Slanesh. Atop the Great Tower, dungeon stairway. The dungeons themselves. So if you want to just have a dungeon bash, you can throw your players into this. They can explore in the classic old school way. Without having a huge overarching plot, they can just search their way through a castle and fight monsters. The Black Pit. Just loads and loads of encounters and places. Bloodheart Drachenfels. And then we're on to adventuring in Castle Drachenfels. So we're 56 pages into this. How many pages did it say? 112 page book. So halfway through it. And we've finished the actual location. And we're on to adventure ideas. So, the adventurers, what do they know? Magic use in the castle. Sleeping in Castle Drachenfels. The castle and damaging it, whether they could tear it down and destroy the evil within. Magic use by the castle. The warp passageways, showing how different places warp around. So you can move around the castle from place to place without crossing the space in between. Major adventure themes. So stop the cultists. Castle Drachenfels must be destroyed. Treasure hunt. Bounty hunting. So perhaps somebody's taken up hiding within the ruins. Find the relic. I left my heart in Castle Drachenfels. Drachenfels lives. And secondary adventure themes and plot twists. The Dutiful Grandson. Cursed. Character quest. So reasons why people might want to travel into it apart from the big main adventure. Gobrot's Boys. So a band of goblins has taken place up in it. And we've got profiles for different monsters which appear. So harpies and ghosts and zombies. We've got the stats for those. The Grand Carriage. The Grand Carriage is an imposing vehicle capable of inflicting considerable damage with its stomp attack. So Drachenfels' carriage can actually attack people. Red Mold. Blood Leeches. Elf Ghosts. The Killer Bed. Was that not a film? Something the Bed That Eats. Maximilian von Steinhoff, Vampire. The Cuckoo Clock. The Cuckoo itself. Bardol the Hunchback. Just lots of really interesting characters to use. The Oracle. The Oracle is a bizarre, unique creature. An ex-scholar, ex-wizard with the psychic powers of precognition, warped in ways surpassingly strange even by the standards of the castle. He is not undead. He exists in a bizarre limbo state. The Killer Door. Animated armor. Fungal mass. There's so many different ideas for monsters to throw at people to keep your game interesting and different and make Castle Drachenfels a completely unique place. So we've got cultists. We have Constant Drachenfels himself, the stats for him with all his skills and spells, special rules, all his magic, profile changes, magic items, and his magic. New monsters, fiends, garden spirits, homunculuses, vampiric minions, wraith wisp, and we've got some new spells. The pre-generated characters, let's flick over and have a look at those. So, Erzarbet Loschenberg, Cleric of Verena, Jean-Paul Charpentier, an ex-burglar, Dundrel Goldhand, a scout, Tuniel Streamtrail, assassin, ex-bounty hunter, Heidi Kant, outlaw chief, and a Mariel Moonstream, the wizard. And I imagine their stats follow. Yep, and we've got their stats on these following pages. So the different player characters you could use. We've got player handouts here to hook people in. Which, nice handwriting. They're a little small for my liking. If you're going to have a handwritten letter, it should be a full page. But I can accept that. Drachenfels profile sheet. And then at the very back, we've got an advert for White Dwarf. Make sure you don't miss out on a single issue of White Dwarf, Game Workshop monthly magazine exclusively devoted to the Games Workshop hobby. Not to the role-playing hobby, but to the Games Workshop hobby. And that's Castle Drachenfels. I loved the novel, so even though by the time I got this, it had been out of print for a while, but it was definitely a book that I sought out and love having in my collection. It's very nicely done, the artwork's brilliant, and it adds a lot to the novel, which is absolutely amazing. Anyway, as usual, I think I've whittled on quite enough. Please like and subscribe and comment below, as all three do me massive favours with the YouTube algorithm gods, as they look favourably upon me for your actions. But most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.